Okay, so welcome, Dr. Mayakin Ziegler of Monarch Family Chiropractic, and welcome to our weekly workshop, Adjustment versus Manipulation, really understanding the difference. And what I think you'll get out of this tonight is understanding that you play a role in the care you're receiving. Now that's obvious because you have to show up for your adjustment. You have to really commit to your care that you're receiving as we render a care over a time frame and objectively measure that over time. So obviously you play a role in your care because you got to show up. You got to take responsibility for your state of health and where it's going. But you actually play a role in the adjustment. It's not just laying down on the table and letting the docs do their thing, as you'll find out. So first, what I like to do is go through the difference between manipulation and adjustment. So let's just talk about manipulation as a term. Okay, when we went to Webster's dictionary, these are some of the descriptions that they gave to define manipulation. The action of manipulating something in a skillful manner. To treat or operate with as if with hands or by mechanical means, especially in a skillful manner. So to manipulate a pencil, manipulate a machine, to handle, manage, or use, especially with skill in some process of treatment or performance, or to examine or treat by skillful use of the hands, as in palpation, reduction of dislocations, or changing the position of a fetus. Now, as I'm reviewing some of these definitions, it's obvious that there is a skilled component here of the use of manipulation, especially in terms of the action. Now, I think we can all agree that I don't particularly love the term manipulate in terms of what it means human to human. I think manipulation can be pretty negative or derogatory in terms of not under the framework or the lens of a skill to render, a treatment, right? But a manipulation in terms of what it can do in terms of a relationship or a human interaction. So for that alone, I don't love the term manipulation. But if we take that with that lens, and professions who use manipulation in the form of treatment, osteopaths manipulate, physical therapists manipulate, acupuncturists manipulate, massage therapists manipulate, physical trainers manipulate, Pilates and yoga instructors manipulate. Okay. Manipulation is very different from the adjustment, and that is what we are going to discuss today. And just an understanding of treatment. Typically, a treatment, if we define that, a treatment indicates that it is a way to address a specific condition. There is a starting point and there is an ending point, right? If we are treating something, we expect an outcome and we expect that treatment to end at some point, okay? Chiropractors like to use the term care. Okay, care is very different than treatment. Within care and the umbrella of care, when we render care, that happens over a time frame. And within the umbrella of care, we can have these phases of treatment. Okay. And when we look at your care plan, if we've recommended 12 months of care or 6 months of care, understand that we don't typically use the term treatment in a day-to-day time frame. We really like to use the term care, and the way we render that care is through adjustments, which we'll get into. But I just want you to understand that treatment is short-term. There's an ending, there's a start and an end point. And within the confines of care, there can be timeframes where you need treatment to address a specific condition or concern. But as you go along the process in your care plan, we find that you move away from the acute condition-based lens of care, and you move to a place of, I want to experience more. I want to move towards vitality, longevity, a higher expression of health, right? And so when we look at treatment, we look at those acute timeframes. Care is really bigger picture of where is this person going in their trajectory of health. And, you know, we always have a long-term view of, you know, what does this person look like if they're on this trajectory in the 10, 20 years from now, right? We want to make sure we're addressing that. So back to manipulation and all of these professions who use manipulation as a way to render. Now, this is taken straight from, you know, the guide to the physical therapist practice. Physical therapists do not perform adjustments. We do, however, utilize spinal and extremity manipulation along with other manual therapy techniques and exercises in the treatment of neuromuscular pain and dysfunction in order to restore mobility within these systems. So I guess I would say to really focus on, you know, restore mobility, neuromuscular pain and dysfunction. We do not utilize manipulation to manage, co-manage, or prevent diseases or conditions in other body systems. This is from the American Osteopathic Association. Using osteopathic manipulative therapy, your DO can effectively treat your muscles and joints to relieve pain, promote healing, and increase overall mobility. So again, what we are seeing here are muscles and joints. We are seeing mobility stand out for me in the framework of our allopathic model of healthcare, which typically physical therapists and DOs fall into that use manipulation. Now, understand, in this framework, manipulation is used for mobility. If there's restriction, if there's lack of movement in a joint, we want to introduce movement. Okay, so this, when you crack your knuckles, you know, I don't crack my knuckles ever. I don't get a lot of movement or popping sounds, but when you crack your knuckles, that's considered a manipulation. Okay, when a yoga instructor, you're doing downward dog and a yoga instructor puts downward pressure and helps you sit into that movement or that position, that is a manipulation. Okay, so it is really to introduce movement where there's no movement. It's restricted. Let's get mobility through that joint. And when that happens, we know that it relieves pain and can help with healing. Okay, but why is that? So pause on that manipulation lens, and let's shift to the adjustment. So chiropractors are the only profession who perform an adjustment. They're within each profession, and it doesn't matter if it's chiropractic or, you know, in the medical world or the, you know, the world of mechanics or electricians, we all have our own verbiage that define our profession. Adjustment is a word that defines our profession. Subluxation is a word that defines our profession. So if those terms are used outside of chiropractic under different, you know, contexts, it's different. Okay. For people outside of chiropractic to use the term subluxation or adjustment, they probably don't have a real good understanding of it. So they'll use the word manipulation. But chiropractic is made up of a philosophy, a science, and art of things that are natural. Okay. It is a system to adjust the segments of the spinal column by hand for the correction of the cause of dis-ease. Okay, not disease, but in the spectrum of disease and health, right? If you are not in a state of ease, we consider that a state of dis-ease, lack of ease, poor ease, right? You're not totally flow-bone condition disease, but you're in a state of moving along a spectrum toward disease. That makes sense? So philosophy, science, and art of things natural. So what that means is it defines what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. Okay. And chiropractic is a profession that is really enriched with philosophy. We actually have 30 three principles that we follow, that we use in terms of our lens of how we deliver care, and specifically the adjustment. But the first principle is what we call our major premise, which is there is a universal intelligence in all matter that continually gives to it all of its properties and actions, thus maintaining it in existence. So that universal intelligence is what makes, this table, right? That allows for it to exist in its form, just like you and I, just like everything around us. So in chiropractic, we have this philosophy that we know there's a universal intelligence that is continually providing the intelligence within that matter to give it its properties and actions, okay? So how does that translate to the adjustment? The adjustment's purpose is to correct the vertebral subluxation. Let's define subluxation. Sub, less than, lux, light, ation, move from center. So a subluxation in Latin basically means that when we look at the vertebral subluxation, there is a movement from the vertebra that has moved from center and is really impacting the life of that person. So the adjustment is meant to restore function of that vertebra. And when we do that, we enhance the life expression and optimize the health potential of that being. So when we're talking about subluxation, we're talking about assessing where in that person is there a disconnect between the brain and the body. Where is there weak signaling? Where is there the brain's inability to connect with and understand and process our world in a way that is allowing for a higher expression of health? Which is very different, if we go back to understanding the manipulation, very different than just no movement, rigidity, lack of movement, lack of mobility, lack of range of motion, right? We want to understand, why is there lack of movement within a system, and is it coming from that component or that joint or that layer, or is it coming from a bigger system? So chiropractic recognizes the ecosystem of the body, and the way that we look for dis-ease or stress within the body is through subluxation. Most of the time we focus that in the spine, but we can find that in extremities. Because when subluxation is present, it is really moving away from life expression. So very different from manipulation, right? So there's an actual equation for adjustment. Let's see if I have it on this next page. Yes. So this is where you play a role in your adjustment. So there was a doc in chiropractic who studied physics, neurology, and thermodynamics. And this was the equation that he came up with. So the adjustment equals the consciousness of the patient. What that means is, what is your headspace? What is your framework around what you believe that's going to happen when you lay on the table, right? Do you just want to get out of pain? Do you want to move better? Do you just, we'll start there. Do you want to get out of pain? Versus the other end of the spectrum is, do you want to experience a higher expression of health? Do you want to be more vitalistic in how your brain and body is processing your world? Do you want to move towards your potential, right? Very different states of being in both of those. And then you can have anything in between. And so the consciousness of you receiving the adjustment plus the consciousness of the chiropractor delivering the adjustment, right? Am I just wanting to put movement into a body? Do I want to just bring mobility back to a joint? Do I want to take stress off a system, increase better connection between the brain and the body, enhance life? support this body and this brain moving towards a higher level of expression, right? Very different. So the consciousness of both the doc and the patient times the force of the adjustment. So how the adjustment is delivered, right? Very specific, very intentional. Plus, I love this word, coherence. So I want you to think about coherence as, well, I say system harmony, but I want you to think about coherence as a flock of geese or a school of fish, right? You've got hundreds of fish within that school, but they're all moving as one, right? They're individual, yet they're collectively one. So think of it in terms of this. You have trillions and trillions of cells within your body right now whose only purpose is for you to survive and thrive and exist. That's their only purpose. And anything that does not look like you, it will take care of, boom, immediately. Isn't that cool? Like, yeah, trillions and trillions of cells who are working for you and only you, nobody else. I was like, boom, I love that thought. So coherence is those trillions of cells working as one, right? Think about a symphony, right? We go to the Colorado Symphony because they are the best. And when that conductor starts a piece and all of those musicians with their instruments are creating this masterpiece of sound and harmony, right? That is your body at its highest coherence, total harmony. So the adjustment is meant to increase that coherence and decrease the entropy within the body. And entropy is just chaos. That's disorganization. That's, a cell going rogue, right? Cancer is an example of entropy in a body, where cells get reprogrammed. Well, actually, their programming is they don't die. And there's more and more cells that accumulate and don't die, and they create this mass and this major stress to the body. So, side note there. So that's the intent of the adjustment. And you are a component of that. So when you lay on the table, what is your thought process? What is my thought process? And that's where the biggest thing is, if I am talking about the weather, or if I'm talking about Thanksgiving, or if I am talking about how the Broncos played the other day, how well is my headspace and my consciousness in delivering your adjustment? You should tell me to shut up if I am adjusting. It's hard because I love everybody who comes into our office. I want to connect with you and I want to know how your life is, and yet it doesn't serve a purpose in terms of the care that we're delivering. And so I am totally fine with you keeping Dr. Kristen and I in check to say, hey, doc, this isn't appropriate conversation, because I want you to be thinking about my highest expression of health right now. I want you to think about where I'm going here in 30 years, because I still want to be, running my marathons and playing with my grandkids or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? We really want to honor the adjustment because it is sacred, because we want you to experience. Dr. Kristen and I, when we start talking about our purpose and what excites us, we start crying because we get so excited about it. And that's the energy you want at the table. And so, and we want you to come into the office with that similar desire, right? So let's talk about this. This is cool. So there's a doc named Heidi Havoc who does tons of research out of New Zealand. And she wants to study what happens in the brain when you get adjusted, okay? So I want you to understand that when you're getting adjusted, we're changing the brain. And this goes into specifics on what they've found based on the research, but we're changing your brain. We're not just, again, manipulating your spine to get movement into a joint that doesn't move. As we're talking, you'll start to see, wow, that's pretty low energy in terms of what a body can do in its expression of health. So when we correct the subluxation, we see improved brain function. So some of the things they've seen in research is they see improved or altered visual acuity and visual field size. Okay, so your ability to see changes within, your visual input, which is pretty cool. Reduce joint position sense error, meaning your brain's ability to know where your arm and leg is, even when you have your eyes closed. We call that proprioception. Okay. Eyes visual input is big. So if you're at home right now, try this. You guys can try it too. I want you to stand up. Go ahead. You guys try it too. Everyone stand up. And I want you to go on one foot. Go do the dominant side. Do the easy side first. Okay. Keep your eyes open. And I want you just to hold it there. Now, I want you to close your eyes. Everyone close your eyes. See how it feels. Oh, that's a little different. Okay. Go to the other side, the harder side, and maybe your non-dominant side. Close your eyes. Okay. See how that feels. See how it's different? Get a little wobbly. That's proprioception. Okay. Try with support. You guys can sit down, but this is something you can try. Try walking heel toe with your eyes closed, forward and backwards. Just see how you do with that. See how your balance is in your movement, your confidence in how you move. Because what we're seeing when you get adjusted is it reduces any error and improves your proprioception. So your brain's ability to understand where your body is in space without the visual input, which is big. So decreased reaction time. Do you think these football players love this? You gotta like game time decision. We're gonna throw a ball. You want decreased reaction time. You want to be able to respond to that. So we see that with adjustments. Altered brain processing, meaning there's increased demand on a brain. Brain can process that without dropping in executive function. I mean, you see people, you know, if you are really upset and angry, do you make good decisions? I mean, are you like, I'm going to think about my response right now to make sure it's appropriate, doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. I'm going to think through this before I respond, right? No, we don't do that. We drop into, I mean, a space of primitive response, which isn't always a great response. So we see altered brain processing when demand goes up. Changes in the way the brain integrates sensory and motor information. So majority of the brain is like sensory, like 70% of what's coming in is sensory input, how the brain perceives and receives information. Less of it is motor input. So if the information coming in is altered, that means we have poor information the brain can respond and process. And so we see when you get adjusted, it changes how the brain integrates that sensory information to the motor. So altered spinal cord reflex excitability. Do we want the spinal cord excited? Like, do we want constant stress on the spinal cord to excite that spinal cord? No. We want the spinal cord relaxed and at ease. We don't want any tension on that spinal cord. So it alters that. It changes specific messages that get sent to muscles from the central nervous system, increases muscle strength in the legs, reduces or prevents muscle fatigue developing. I mean, this is why professional sports players love chiropractic. It helps with performance. And I will tell you that if anyone needs chiropractic care, it's the everyday person out there, you know? What we do day in and day out is far more important, although we love to watch them, far more important in terms of our existence than, you know, the football player making the catch and running down, making a touchdown. You guys are more important. So the other research that I love to share, and I'll end with this, that I love to share is they've done brain scans before and after an adjustment, and they found that there's 20% increase function in your prefrontal cortex. What is prefrontal cortex? It's the thing that's developing, you know, basically we're finding out in the first 2 to 3 decades of life. Our brain doesn't fully develop until we're 25 to 32, but it's the thing that's developing here that doesn't allow us to walk right away like animals. You know, like a cat's born, and when do they want that cat to walk? Right away. Doesn't it? There's something wrong. A horse is born. If the foal doesn't walk right away, we know there's a problem. What happens with a kid? Are we saying, something's wrong? That baby's not walking right now. Right? I mean, it'd be weird if there was you know, a 1-day-old walking, right? Yeah, it takes like 9, 12, sometimes 14 months, but typically around 12 months we're walking. That's because the brain's developing. We're getting outer executive function. Prefrontal cortex is finally getting neurons firing out here. That's why we're not walking. And so what is executive function? It's goal-oriented tasks. It's focus and concentration. It's the ability to process emotional stress and respond to it. It's autonomic nervous system. It's your stress response. It's how you perceive pain. It's all of those things. So we're finding every time you get adjusted, increased function in your prefrontal cortex. Now, that doesn't get you excited. I don't know what will. So that's the huge difference, manipulation versus adjustment. We're not looking for, oh, this joint needs to move. We're looking for brain function, better brain-body connection, better processing, better reserve and resiliency, so you can be a better mom, wife, you, kid, whatever in your world. So the more people who are getting adjusted, the more people who can handle the demand in their world, the more people who can process their world, it is a healthier world, right? So, I mean, not that it gives anybody an excuse, but next time somebody cuts you off, just say, well, that person needs an adjustment. You know what I mean? Just say, okay, they're not processing well. They need an adjustment. So, so there's just such cool research out there that shows how your adjustments are impacting not just your spine, but your brain. And the more you consistently are getting adjusted and really receiving care, not just treatment, but care, because the pain stuff goes away. We're really good at that. But your brain needs lots of input to help with connection, to help with how it processes, because by the time we're seeing you 20, 30, 40 years in, it's developed a pattern and it's developed a program, and we need to change that over time. Well, excuse me, you need to change that over time. It takes consistency, takes intensity, takes frequency. And that's why we have these spinal workshops, right? Because the more we hear this, the more you hold yourself accountable to doing what's most right for you. And that's why we say people who show up for workshops tend to respond 30 to 70% better than those who don't, because you are ready to do different things, because you're hearing things, it's sitting, it's seeping in, and you say, oh, I'm going to go do that. Right? So I'm going to end here. We're doing a patient appreciation week next week. That means we've got still 7 slots available for anybody that you want to refer in who wants to get their spine checked. As you just heard today, it could be really vital in somebody experiencing a completely different experience in their life when they get their spine checked. But sometimes they just need the seed. So you refer anybody in next week. We will do our first exam plus x-rays at our expense, period. We're not looking to sign everybody on. We're looking at getting the word out. We are educating. This is a part of our giving back to you and our community. We find that important. So please share our Patient Appreciation Week with those that you love and care about, because we know that when people who are in community together, people who are family and friends, when they start doing healthy things together, it starts to change long-term. And we want healthy families. We want healthy communities. So love and appreciate you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Bring them into the office, and we'll see you next time. So